The cold wind swept through the broken streets of what was once Chicago, whispering through shattered glass and rusting vehicles. The city had fallen silent, not because people were gone entirely, but because the ones left knew better than to make noise. It was now a world of whispers, careful steps, and hidden eyes. Miles beneath that broken skyline, inside a fortified subway station lit with solar lamps and homemade wiring, a small group of survivors listened with bated breath to a radio. The static was constant, almost soothing at this point, but something new had crackled through the noise just minutes ago. A voice. Distant. Broken. But undeniably human. To any survivors, repeat, Haven in Sector 17, coordinates transmitting, stay away from Echo Valley, repeat. And then silence. Captain Elena Hart stood by the makeshift communication desk, her hand still on the dial. She was a former military strategist, once stationed overseas, now leading this small group through the ruins of their homeland. Her jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the radio, heart pounding with a mix of hope and caution. She turned to the others. "Someone's out there," she said firmly. "And they've got a message. Could be a trap, but it could also be the break we've been waiting for." Across the room, Mason, a mechanic with a sharp tongue and a sharper brain, crossed his arms. "Echo Valley? That place was overrun months ago. Everyone who went there didn't come back. And Sector 17? That's over 200 miles west. Through the dead zones." Elena looked at him without blinking. "We can't ignore a human voice. Not in a world like this." A murmur spread through the room, just 15 people, all they had left in the underground shelter. Some were elderly. A few children huddled near their parents. Most were too tired to hope anymore. But not Elena. Not yet. Sitting near the back was Jonah, a quiet man who once worked in satellite operations. He'd been the one to first catch the signal. "I boosted the frequency." That voice, whoever it was, sounded like they had a clean setup. Military grade, maybe. Someone out there's got tech. Maybe a secure place too. That was enough for Elena. "We move at dawn. Take a scout team. Get closer. Listen again. If there's even a chance that Sector 17 is safe, we go." The others watched her, some with doubt, some with desperate belief. No one challenged her directly. Not yet. Outside, in the ruins above, the streets of Chicago were still. The buildings loomed like broken giants, their windows dark, their walls covered in vines and makeshift barricades. Somewhere in that silence, faint echoes of movement stirred. Not the shuffling of feet, but something far more alert. Morning came with a gray sky and the distant call of crows. Elena led the team of 4, Mason, Jonah, a young medic named Sierra, and a scout named Ray. They moved silently, slipping through alleyways and abandoned rail lines, careful to avoid the sound-sensitive undead that now roamed freely across the city. They weren't the typical mindless creatures from old movies. These were sharper, twisted by something strange. Their coordination had improved in recent months. Their speed too. Some survivors whispered of hive minds or evolving instincts. No one knew for sure. They just called them the quiet ones, not because they were silent, but because they forced everyone else to be. The group reached an old maintenance station where Jonah set up his makeshift receiver. As he worked, Mason kept watch with his scavenged binoculars, eyeing rooftops and broken roads for any signs of movement. Sierra patched a gash on Ray's arm from a tumble he'd taken last night during a supply run. Then the static cleared again. Sector 17, coordinates remain unchanged. Echo Valley compromised, survivors must avoid contact, hostile behavior increasing, the signal will repeat, "This is Commander Tyrell, hold the line." Elena's eyes widened. "Commander Tyrell," she repeated. He was on the West Coast defense teams. "I thought they were all gone." Jonah's hands trembled slightly on the dial. "No way this is a coincidence. He's alive. And warning us." But before anyone could speak further, a metallic clang echoed in the distance. The group froze. Sierra held her breath. Ray instinctively lifted his rusted spear. Silence again. And then, a second clang. They weren't alone. Back! Elena hissed. Everyone, back to the tunnels. But it was too late. A shadow moved across the rooftop. Another followed. Silhouettes against the cloudy sky. The quiet ones had heard the transmission too. And they had learned where to look. Elena locked eyes with Mason. Run. They didn't wait to see what was coming. They just ran. Boots slammed against broken pavement as Elena's team sprinted through the remains of an old maintenance yard. Rusted pipes jutted out from the walls, and abandoned crates turned the path into a maze. Behind them, the eerie silence was replaced by a sound they all dreaded, measured footsteps, fast and in perfect rhythm. The quiet ones were tracking them. Left! Elena shouted, pointing toward a rusted stairwell leading to a collapsed rooftop. They didn't have time to double-check. One by one, they clambered up the twisted metal, careful not to make noise, yet fast enough to outrun their shadowy pursuers. At the top, the rooftop stretched wide, cracked and half-eaten by time. Mason glanced around, spotting a covered vent system and a couple of barrels tipped over. Nowhere to hide, he muttered. No, Elena replied quickly. But maybe somewhere to fight. Ray, panting hard, crouched behind one of the barrels and readied his spear. We can't outrun them forever. They're faster than they used to be. Jonah dropped beside a rusted vent, clutching his receiver. We've got to protect this. If that transmission repeats, I need to record the full message. Elena nodded. Then we make a stand. Not forever. Just long enough. They knew what was coming. The quiet ones never made noise when they approached. No growling. No moaning. Just the sudden arrival of unnatural movement and uncanny coordination. What once were humans now moved like hunting machines. Mason pulled out a flare from his backpack. Still have one left. Won't kill them, but might buy us seconds. Elena pulled a sheet of metal over to form a crude shield, crouching behind it. Everyone hold position. Quiet. Eyes open. For a moment, the world stilled. The wind blew dust across the rooftop, and clouds drifted across the morning sky. The group's breathing was shallow, every ear straining to catch a sound, a scrape, a breath, anything. Then the rooftop door creaked. A hand, pale and twitching, pushed it open. They emerged in single file, almost synchronized, 4 of them at first. Dressed in tattered remains of military gear, they no longer looked fully human. Their eyes gleamed unnaturally, and their movements were smooth, deliberate. Elena whispered, "Now." Mason threw the flare. It burst into a bright red glow, filling the rooftop with an eerie light. The quiet ones recoiled, their senses momentarily overwhelmed. That was enough. Ray lunged forward, using the distraction to drive his spear into one of the creatures, knocking it back. It staggered but didn't fall. They didn't fall easily. Sierra grabbed Jonah and pulled him farther behind cover. Record it, fast. Jonah, hands shaking, hit the red button on the side of his device just as the signal kicked back in. Message repeating. This is Commander Tyrell. Echo Valley overrun. Avoid the northern rail tunnel's established perimeter. Static. Then silence. But the message was recorded. The quiet ones weren't distracted for long. One of them leaped over the barrel and crashed into Ray, sending him sprawling. His spear clattered across the rooftop. Ray! Elena dove forward, swinging a metal pipe into the creature's back, knocking it sideways. Get up! Ray groaned and rolled away, grabbing his weapon just in time to deflect another strike. Jonah looked up from the recording device. Got it. We need to move. Now. Back stairwell. Elena yelled. We'll circle around and lose them in the southern alley. Mason tossed another scrap of metal to block the door. That won't hold for long. As the group began to retreat, one of the creatures broke formation and sprinted toward Jonah. Its speed was shocking, a blur of motion and intent. Sierra didn't hesitate. She stepped between them and swung her backpack with full force. The impact knocked the creature's head sideways just long enough for Jonah to slip past. "Go!" she screamed. They rushed to the back stairwell, rickety and rusted but still standing. One by one, they descended. As Elena reached the bottom, she shouted, "We've got what we need. Now we get back to the others." They disappeared into the alleys just as the quiet ones burst onto the rooftop behind them. Back at the underground station, hours later, the survivors gathered again in the main hall. The radio crackled as Jonah replayed the recorded message. Every word from Commander Tyrell was absorbed in silence. Sierra stood beside Elena, her clothes torn, her face streaked with dust. "You think he's really alive?" Elena didn't answer immediately. Her gaze rested on the map they'd taped to the wall. Sector 17 was a long way off, and the route passed directly through the northern tunnels, now confirmed to be dangerous. But danger was everywhere. "If he's alive," Elena said finally, "he's the last sign of real leadership we've heard in months. He's warning us for a reason." Mason frowned. "Then why risk sending the signal again and again?" "Because," Jonah said quietly, "someone out there is still fighting." Elena turned to the group. "We prepare. At sunrise tomorrow, we move." No one cheered. But no one argued either. In a dead America, even the faintest echo of hope was worth chasing. The morning came quietly, veiled in a gray mist that clung to the streets like a warning. The underground station was silent, every survivor awake but whispering. Even the usual clatter of gear and boots was replaced by cautious movement. The plan had been decided. They would head towards Sector 17, following the map's safest path, but it would take them directly through a section of the city everyone referred to as the Gray Zone. No one liked going near it. The Gray Zone was where cities went to die completely, streets swallowed by ash, structures burned hollow, and something about the air always felt wrong. Elena stared at the map one last time before folding it into her jacket. She turned to the group. "No noise. No distractions. We move fast, keep close. Eyes on each other." Ray gave a firm nod, his bruised arm now wrapped in cloth. "We keep our heads low and our weapons ready." They exited the shelter, stepping into the ruins of what once had been a vibrant part of the city. Now, it was reduced to hollowed buildings and shattered windows. Bent street signs leaned like tired sentries, and overturned cars lined the roads. The mist moved with them, coiling and thickening the deeper they went. Jonah clutched his recording device, as if it were more important than the food in his pack. "The signal came from the northeast tower, right?" "That's the one Tyrell mentioned," Mason replied. "Used to be part of a relay system. We can use it to boost our own signal too, if it still has power." They entered the Gray Zone without ceremony, no line in the dirt, no signpost. Just a slow change in the air. Even the wind sounded hollow. The silence became oppressive, as if the world itself was holding its breath. "Something's off," Sierra whispered. "No crows. No rats. Nothing." "Eyes sharp," Elena murmured. "We don't know if the quiet ones patrol this far out." They passed through a collapsed hotel, the walls scorched black from fire. As they moved past a once grand lobby, Jonah froze. "Wait." Everyone stopped. He pointed to the far wall. Written in black soot were words, large and shaky. "They see without eyes." "What does that even mean?" Mason muttered, lowering his rifle. "They've evolved," Sierra said quietly. "We've all seen it. They don't need eyes to find us. They feel movement. Smell heat. Something's changed them." Ray scanned the ceiling. "Let's keep moving." Suddenly, from behind a shattered vending machine, a soft metallic clink echoed through the room. It was faint. Barely audible. The group instinctively dropped into a crouch. Elena motioned for silence, then inched toward the machine. She peered behind it, holding her breath. Nothing. Just a can that had fallen from the edge, rolling in place. Relief. And then, a scream. Not human. One of the walls seemed to ripple as a quiet one lunged through it, having waited behind a makeshift curtain of debris. Its skin was dry and stretched tight, bones moving beneath like snapping cables. It moved impossibly fast, crashing into Ray. He hit the ground hard, struggling as its clawed hands reached for his throat. Ray! Elena and Sierra leaped in unison, their weapons slamming into the creature's side. Ray gasped, rolling away just in time. Mason aimed and fired a bolt from his modified launcher. It hit the creature in the leg, slowing it. Jonah drove a sharpened pipe into its side, finally pinning it against the wall. The creature hissed, then suddenly fell still. Was it alone? Sierra breathed heavily, backing away. Ray groaned. I don't think anything's alone out here. They exited the hotel fast, but cautiously, the tension stretched like wire. The sun had barely risen above the cloud line, giving everything a pale glow. The mist began to part just ahead, revealing the tower. It stood crooked, with the top bent slightly like a snapped neck. Still, it loomed above the city, silent and waiting. That's it, Jonah whispered. That's the relay tower. They approached carefully. The doors had been torn from the hinges long ago. Inside, the lobby was half buried in rubble, but the stairs remained intact. Elena looked back. We secure the upper floor, check for a working terminal. Jonah, you and Mason see if we can get power. The rest of US will hold the perimeter. They moved in. Dust filled the stairwell, and each step groaned beneath their weight. On the third floor, they found what they were looking for, a control room lined with broken monitors and a single console, its screen cracked but flickering. Jonah's eyes lit up. There's still juice. Barely. He plugged in the recorder. Static. Then, a sound. It wasn't the same message this time. It was a reply. A different voice, male, exhausted but alive. If anyone hears this, this is Tyrell. We are trapped in the deep line bunkers, southeast end. Multiple sectors compromised. Supplies low. Repeat, sector breach, survivors down to 14. Then, static again. The group stood in stunned silence. He was alive. And now, they had a direction. Elena stepped forward, eyes hard. We go southeast. And just as the words left her lips, they heard something, climbing the stairs behind them. The sound of boots, or claws, scraping against the stairwell echoed like a death sentence. Everyone in the relay room froze. Mason moved to the door, peeking down the hallway. His breath caught. They're coming up. Elena grabbed her rifle. How many? Mason turned, face pale. More than 5. Maybe 10. And they're not walking. Ray groaned, still shaken from the earlier attack. Then we don't have time to argue. Barricade the stairwell. They sprang into action. Desks were flipped, filing cabinets dragged, loose cables tied across entry points. Sierra stood at the stairwell with her pistol raised, waiting for the first shadow to show. She didn't blink. Jonah clutched the recorder. We can't leave yet. If I lose this signal. Then don't, Elena snapped. Just be ready to move when I say so. Below them, the footsteps stopped. The silence was worse. Mason stepped back from the barricade. Why did they stop? No one answered. Then came the sound, barely audible at first. A low, guttural scratching, like nails dragging against concrete. Then whispers. Not words. Not human. Just a chorus of breathless noise. Ray's hands tightened on his bat. They're toying with us. Suddenly, the wall to their left rattled violently. A long crack split through the drywall. The survivors flinched. They're not coming through the stairs, Sierra said quietly. They're already inside. A door at the far end of the hallway burst open, and 3 quiet ones charged in, crawling low on all fours, their heads twitching, mouths open in eerie silence. Elena fired first. Her bullet caught one in the neck, but it didn't stop. Mason swung his axe as the second one leaped toward Jonah, knocking him and the recorder to the floor. Sierra tackled the third, slamming it into the corner with all her weight. She stabbed it repeatedly with her knife, her face clenched in rage and fear. Jonah scrambled back, reaching for the recorder. The first creature reached him, but Ray intercepted it, slamming his bat down with a savage shout. Bone cracked. The creature jerked, twitched, and lay still. They all stood panting, eyes wide. 3 dead. Jonah looked down at the recorder. Still working. Then we run, Elena barked. They know where we are. We're not dying in a half-broken tower. They exited fast, moving down a different stairwell, one that opened to the building's rear. The alley outside was empty, but for how long? Sierra checked her compass. Deep line bunkers are southeast. About 8 kilometers if we cut through the underground maintenance line. Jonah raised a brow. What's that? It used to be an access tunnel. Before the collapse. Mason sighed. Perfect. We're trading monsters for darkness. No, Elena said. We're choosing the path they're less likely to swarm. That's survival. They sprinted toward a maintenance hatch just beyond a crumbled bus station. The sky above was graying, hinting at dusk. They didn't want to be out when night fell. Sierra reached the hatch first and pulled it open with a groan. The scent hit them immediately, stale air, mold, and metal. Ray wrinkled his nose. Smells like old death. It probably is, Sierra said, leading the way down the rusted ladder. One by one, they descended into the dark. At the bottom, the tunnel stretched ahead, narrow, low, and shadowy. The walls were lined with broken lights and cables, and faint echoes returned every footstep. They turned on their flashlights. The beams shook slightly in nervous hands. Jonah mumbled, "You sure they won't follow us down here?" "No one's sure of anything anymore," Mason replied. They moved quickly, the tunnel sloping downward. Old rail lines curved away beneath their feet. At intervals, they passed rusted doors marked with faded emergency symbols. No one dared open them. A low moan drifted through the tunnel. Elena signaled for silence. They all froze. The moan came again. Closer. But not from behind. Ahead. Sierra raised her pistol. There shouldn't be anyone down here. Then, in the flickering edge of Jonah's flashlight beam, something moved. It wasn't fast. It staggered slightly, as if it had forgotten how to walk. But it was human. Or had been. Its eyes were fogged, and its mouth hung open, skin drawn tight over its skull. But unlike the quiet ones, this one groaned, a classic walker, an older stage of infection. "Why is it alone?" Ray asked. "It's not," Mason said grimly. More groans answered. Shadows emerged from the darkness, not sprinting like the quiet ones, but shuffling, dozens of them, filling the tunnel. "We go back," Elena shouted. But as they turned, more moans rose behind them. Blocked in both directions. Ray swore. "This is a trap." "No," Elena said sharply, eyes scanning the walls. "There's always another way." Jonah pointed to a small emergency exit sign. Faded. Hanging loosely. "There," he shouted. "Side corridor." They rushed for it. Mason kicked the rusted door open. Inside, a narrow crawlspace stretched into blackness. One by one, they disappeared into the narrow chute, the sound of moaning growing louder behind them. Ray turned back to slam the door shut just as the first walker lunged toward him. He dodged, rolled inside, and pulled the door with all his strength. It latched. For now. Darkness surrounded them. But ahead, far off, there was the faintest flicker of red light. Sierra whispered, "That might be power." Elena nodded. "Then we're still alive." The crawlspace was barely wide enough for them to squeeze through. Rust flaked from the walls and clung to their clothes like ash. Behind them, the sealed door groaned softly, as if something on the other side was testing its strength. Ray coughed. "Who builds tunnels this tight?" "Emergency access," Sierra replied. "For engineers. Not soldiers, not survivors." Jonah, crawling ahead with the recorder clutched tight to his chest, kept his flashlight aimed forward. "That red light, it's getting closer." The faint glow painted the metal walls in flickering hues. As they crawled, the space began to widen, and the sound of machinery, dull and distant, whispered through the steel like a ghost. Finally, the passage opened into a square chamber. It had once been a monitoring station, long abandoned, lined with old screens, cracked monitors, and yellowed maps of the city's underground. In the center of the room, a backup generator hummed. A single red emergency bulb blinked steadily overhead. Sierra stood first, stretching her aching limbs. Power means systems. Systems mean connections. Mason dusted his jacket and glanced around. "So, this place might still talk to the outside?" "Unlikely," Elena said. "But if it links to Deep Line Command." Jonah set the recorder on a dusty table, checking the screen. "Signal's strong again. I can keep transmitting." Ray slumped into a chair. "We need a plan, not just a message." Before anyone could respond, a new sound filled the chamber. A whisper. Soft. Faint. Unmistakable. Jonah turned slowly. "Did you hear?" "Yes," Sierra answered, raising her weapon. They all listened. The whisper wasn't coming from the tunnel, it was echoing through the walls. Like a voice traveling along ancient intercoms. Muffled. Repetitive. "Unit, Corridor 4, survivors, feeding pattern." Ray stood. "That's not a ghost. That's a broadcast." Jonah's eyes widened. "A feeding pattern? Which means someone is watching them," Sierra said darkly. "Maybe even, controlling them." Elena stepped toward a broken console and wiped dust from a half-lit monitor. It flickered, then blinked to life. Grainy footage showed a stretch of tunnel. In the corner, the timestamp still worked. More static. Then another feed appeared, a dim room filled with walkers, not mindless, but pacing. Waiting. Jonah leaned in. "Why would zombies wait?" Mason replied, voice cold. "Because someone taught them to." The team stared in horrified silence. "Not all of them are feral anymore," Sierra said. "Some follow signals." Elena nodded slowly. "The quiet ones. They don't groan. They don't wander. They hunt." Ray took a step back. "So what are we really fighting? A virus? Or a strategy?" Suddenly, the console beeped. The screen shifted, showing them in the chamber. A live feed. A red dot blinked over each of their heads. Sierra's voice dropped. "They see us." Elena drew her sidearm. "We move. Now." Jonah scrambled to grab the recorder. "Where?" "That tunnel behind us is overrun." Mason examined the monitors. "There's a second exit. It's labeled, Corridor 12D, Emergency Rail Bypass." He pointed at a map etched into the wall. "It runs directly beneath the deep line bunker we're heading to." "Good enough," Elena said. "Grab your gear." They moved quickly, exiting through a narrow side door that led into a broader underground corridor, wider than the last, with high ceilings and rusted support beams. The air smelled of oil and mildew. As they jogged forward, a cold breeze swept past them from the darkness ahead. Ray paused. "That's not right. There shouldn't be airflow down here." They turned a corner, and froze. The corridor ahead was open, but something moved within the shadows. Dozens of small red dots danced silently along the walls and ceiling, eyes. Not walkers. Drones. Sleek, insect-like machines skittered across the metal like spiders, their sensors scanning the walls. Jonah whispered, "I thought the government abandoned these tunnels." "They did," Sierra said, "but someone else didn't." The lead drone turned toward them. A light blinked blue. Then it emitted a soft chime. And every red dot suddenly vanished. Not because they powered down, because they fled. Mason raised his axe. Why would machines run? From behind them, they heard it, a rhythmic pounding. A thud, then silence. Another thud. Getting closer. Sierra turned pale. Something's coming. And even the machines are afraid of it. Elena pointed to the map on her wrist display. Corridor 12D is 200 meters ahead. If we run, we make it, Ray finished. No one argued. They ran. Their boots thundered across the floor as the pounding behind them grew louder, faster. The red light that had once flickered with comfort now pulsed like a warning beacon. Jonah clutched the recorder, whispering into it as he ran, "This is day 12. We found something alive in the walls. And something else chasing us. We don't know what it is, but even the infected avoid it. Even the machines." The corridor narrowed, and they saw the sign, 12D access point. Mason pried it open. "Go!" One by one, they dove inside. As Ray closed the hatch behind them, something struck the far end of the corridor with a roar, not a growl. Not a groan. But a sound like metal tearing. And then silence. In the darkness of Corridor 12D, Elena whispered, "Whatever that was, it's not undead." Jonah whispered into the recorder, "And it's not alone." The group pressed forward, each step echoing through the cavernous underground tunnels beneath the ruined city. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow a threat. Sierra's grip tightened on her rifle as the others followed closely behind, Ray still weak but determined to keep up. "This place," Elena whispered, her voice barely audible, "it's not just a bunker. It's something else. Something more." Jonah nodded, his eyes scanning the walls lined with faded posters and blinking consoles. Like a command center. But abandoned, or hidden. Mason stayed near the rear, eyes darting into the darkness. "Doesn't feel empty. Like we're being watched." A sudden metallic clank from the left made them freeze. Weapons raised, hearts pounding. Slowly, a panel slid open, revealing a narrow passage lit by faint, flickering lights. Who would build all this and then just vanish? Ray asked, voice trembling. Sierra motioned for silence. "We need answers. And this way might lead to them." They moved cautiously into the new passage. The air was colder here, stale but less decayed. Strange symbols etched into the walls glowed faintly, pulsing with an unnatural light. Elena's fingers brushed the markings. "This technology, it's beyond anything I've seen. This isn't just military. It's experimental. Maybe even, controlled." Suddenly, a low hum filled the air. The lights flickered violently before stabilizing to reveal a massive sealed chamber ahead. Through the thick glass, they saw a figure seated at a console, illuminated by harsh white light. "That must be the source," Jonah whispered. Sierra nodded. "We need to communicate. But be ready for anything." Elena approached the console, fingers flying over the controls. The system flickered to life, screens glowing with encrypted data and a map of the city, marked with zones highlighted in red. A distorted voice crackled from hidden speakers. "You shouldn't be here." The team froze. The voice was cold, mechanical yet strangely human. "Who are you?" Sierra demanded. The voice hesitated. "Once, I was like you. A survivor. But I chose a different path. I became the echo. The guide for what remains." Mason scoffed. "You're just a madman controlling the infected." "No," the voice corrected. "I am more. I am the connection between the living and the dead. The order and chaos." Behind the glass, the figure stood, pale and motionless. His eyes glowed faintly, movements eerily deliberate. The infection didn't just spread. It evolved. And I evolved with it, he said softly. Ray coughed violently, struggling to stay upright. You're infected? Integrated, the man replied. And I offer you a choice. Join us, or be lost to the silence. Suddenly, the chamber trembled. Hidden alcoves opened, revealing the undead, their eyes glowing in unison with the figures. We're trapped, Elena shouted, panic rising. Sierra rallied the group. Hold your ground. Find another way out. As the walls pulsed with energy and the voice echoed, the living had their time. Now it's ours, the team prepared for the fight of their lives, knowing this battle was just beginning. Let me know if you want me to continue with Part 7. Darkness swallowed the chamber like a wave. The team froze. The only sound was their own breathing, shallow, quick, nervous. Flashlights, Sierra ordered softly. One by one, dim beams cut through the black. The glow revealed the dormant terminal and the dust-filled air swirling around them. Elena's hands trembled as she reached to restart the system. Don't, Jonah warned. That voice. It was watching us through this. Ray leaned heavily against the wall, barely conscious. Mason moved to cover the door, weapon raised, eyes fixed on the corridor. Elena stepped back. If we can't access the feed again, we might be cut off from everything. But if they're tracking us, maybe it's a risk we can't take. What was that voice? Mason asked. A recording? Or something, live? Sierra shook her head. Didn't sound automated. It responded. It knew where we were. Jonah reached for his recorder. It said echoes scream back. Could it mean, the station responds to intrusion? Like a digital reflex? The distant clang echoed again, closer now. Suddenly, a soft click came from the back wall. A section of paneling creaked and slid open, revealing a hidden passage. Cold air spilled out from the blackness beyond. That wasn't there before, Elena whispered. It wants us to go in, Mason muttered. That's never good. But Sierra stepped forward. If there are answers, they're in there. Stay sharp. Stay together. They moved in formation, lights cutting through the dense shadows of the new corridor. This section was different, cleaner, quieter, untouched by decay. The walls shimmered with embedded cables and strange markings. It didn't feel military. This looks experimental, Elena said. More advanced than anything else we've seen. At the far end, the passage opened into a wide room lined with observation windows overlooking a sealed chamber. Inside, they saw movement. Jonah pressed against the glass. Is that a person? Behind the thick window was a lone figure seated at a terminal, illuminated by a single white light. The figure didn't move. Sierra tapped the glass. Nothing. Elena found a control pad beside the window. It's a one-way interface. If I can bypass it, we might be able to talk to them. We don't know who they are, Mason warned. And they don't know us, Sierra replied. Do it. Elena worked quickly. Sparks flew from the interface, and the lights flickered back to life overhead. The figure stirred. Then a speaker in the ceiling crackled. You shouldn't have come here. The voice was the same distorted tone they heard earlier. Who are you? Sierra demanded. Silence. Then, once, I was someone like you. A survivor. A fighter. But when the world changed, I saw a better way. Mason scoffed. You control the dead? You call that better? The voice responded, calm and chilling. I guide them. Gave them purpose. It was chaos before. Now there is order. Jonah stepped forward. You're orchestrating the attacks. You decide who lives and who dies. No. I don't decide. The system does. I only listen. Suddenly, the glass wall lifted. The figure stood. It was a man, but his face was pale, eyes glowing faintly, movements slow and deliberate, as if he were no longer fully human. The infection evolved, he said. It reached the neural net. And I followed it. Merged with it. I became the voice they hear. Ray, barely standing, coughed violently. You're infected? Integrated, the man replied. And now, you can be, too. He stepped toward them. Mason raised his rifle. Stop, Sierra commanded. But the man kept walking. Crack. A shot rang out. The man staggered but didn't fall. He smiled. You can't kill an echo. Then the chamber trembled. The walls pulsed. Lights dimmed. And behind them, the passage they came through slammed shut. He locked us in. Elena shouted. The man raised his hand. Outside the observation room, undead began to rise from hidden alcoves, slowly, unnaturally silent. Eyes glowing just like his. Jonah gripped the recorder tightly. We need to get this out. Even if we don't survive. People need to know. Sierra grabbed him and Elena. There's another exit. There has to be Star. Keep moving. Mason, cover the rear. As the infected closed in, the lights pulsed again, in sync with the man's breath. And from the speakers, his voice echoed. The living had their time. Now it's ours. Join the silence. Join the order. But the humans ran. And the fight was far from over. Let me know when you want Part 8. Part 8, Dawn of Resistance. The echoing voice faded as the group sprinted through the labyrinthine tunnels, hearts pounding, lungs burning. Behind them, the relentless shuffling of the undead grew louder, a haunting chorus threatening to consume them. Sierra led the charge, her instincts razor-sharp despite exhaustion weighing on her every step. This way, she shouted, spotting a narrow staircase leading upward. The promise of fresh air and sunlight was a beacon of hope. Jonah carried the recorder close to his chest, determined that the truth they uncovered would not be buried in darkness. We have to warn the others. People need to understand what's really controlling the chaos. Mason covered their rear, firing sporadically to keep the infected at bay. Each shot was a desperate plea for survival. Ray, weak but stubborn, struggled to keep pace, leaning heavily on Elena. The stairs led them to a shattered street strewn with debris, where the early dawn painted the sky in soft hues of orange and pink. For a moment, the world felt almost normal, almost peaceful. But Sierra's eyes scanned the horizon. The city was no longer theirs. Smoke curled from distant fires, and silhouettes moved with unnatural precision. The voice, the echo, it's more than just a person, she said grimly. It's a system. A network that has taken control. And it's learning. Evolving. Elena nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. If it can integrate like that, it could spread faster than the infection ever did. It's not just about survival anymore, it's about fighting for humanity's soul. They pressed forward, weaving through abandoned vehicles and crumbled buildings. Every shadow could hide danger, every step could be their last. Suddenly, a crackling burst over a handheld radio Mason had scavenged earlier. If anyone is alive, this is the resistance. We have fortified zones. Supplies. Medical aid. Join us. Fight back. A spark of hope ignited in their chests. Jonah raised the recorder again. This is the message people need. The fight isn't over. It's just beginning. As they moved toward the signal, the city's haunting silence was broken by distant cries, human voices, shouting orders, rallying together. Sierra took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. We've seen the worst. But we've also seen what humanity is capable of. We survive because we fight. Because we refuse to be silenced. Behind them, the creeping shadow of the echo's control lingered, but ahead lay resistance, hope, and the stubborn light of dawn. The battle for America's soul was far from over. But one thing was certain. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. This concludes Echoes of Dead America in 8 gripping, suspense-filled parts designed to keep your audience hooked while staying YouTube-friendly. Would you like help with anything else?